She held over 40 world records. She was the first woman to fly a helicopter. She was the only woman in history to receive the Iron Cross First Class, Nazi Germany's highest military honor. And in the final, burning days of World War II, she flew a plane into the ruins of Berlin just to reach Adolf Hitler's underground bunker and beg him to let her die at his side. Her name was Hanna Reitsch, and she was not a victim of the Nazi regime. She was one of its most devoted believers. While other Germans claimed ignorance, we didn't know. We were just following orders. Reitsch spent the rest of her long life making no such apologies. She never renounced National Socialism. She never expressed grief for the millions murdered by the regime she served. Instead, she shook hands with JFK in the Oval Office, trained pilots in Ghana, and accepted aviation awards from governments around the world, a celebrated aviator who happened to believe in Hitler until the day she died. This is the story of the woman who lived for the sky and died for a ghost. Hanna Reitsch was born in 1912 in Hirschberg, in what was then the German Empire. From childhood, she was obsessed with one thing: flight. She wanted to be a medical missionary, a doctor who traveled the world by air. But once she discovered gliding as a teenager, medicine became secondary. The sky was her true calling. By the early 1930s, she was breaking records. She soared over the Alps. She flew across the Atlantic in a seaplane. She set distance and altitude records that male pilots struggled to match. The aviation world took notice. And so did the Nazis. When Hitler came to power in 1933, the regime immediately recognized Reitsch's propaganda value. Here was the perfect Aryan woman, blonde, athletic, fearless, and German, conquering the skies that the Reich claimed as its own. Joseph Goebbels' propaganda machine embraced her completely. Her face appeared in newspapers. She was featured in newsreels. She was invited to demonstrations before foreign dignitaries. She was, in every sense, the human face of Nazi air power. And Reitsch loved every moment of it. She wasn't coerced into this role. She was a true believer, devoted to Hitler, devoted to the Reich, devoted to the idea that Germany was destined to dominate the world. Hanna Reitsch was born in 1912 in Hirschberg, in what was then the German Empire. From childhood, she was obsessed with one thing: flight. She wanted to be a medical missionary, a doctor who traveled the world by air. But once she discovered gliding as a teenager, medicine became secondary. The sky was her true calling. By the early 1930s, she was breaking records. She soared over the Alps. She flew across the Atlantic in a seaplane. She set distance and altitude records that male pilots struggled to match. The aviation world took notice. And so did the Nazis. When Hitler came to power in 1933, the regime immediately recognized Reitsch's propaganda value. Here was the perfect Aryan woman, blonde, athletic, fearless, and German, conquering the skies that the Reich claimed as its own. Joseph Goebbels' propaganda machine embraced her completely. Her face appeared in newspapers. She was featured in newsreels. She was invited to demonstrations before foreign dignitaries. She was, in every sense, the human face of Nazi air power. And Reitsch loved every moment of it. She wasn't coerced into this role. She was a true believer, devoted to Hitler, devoted to the Reich, devoted to the idea that Germany was destined to dominate the world. By 1944, it was clear to many inside the Reich that Germany was losing. But not to Hanna Reitsch, and certainly not to the true believers around Hitler. Reitsch had a plan. If Germany's pilots were willing to die, truly willing, they could turn the tide. She proposed a suicide squadron, a unit of volunteer pilots who would fly explosive-laden aircraft directly into Allied warships, bridges, and strategic targets. No ejection, no bailout, just a final, fatal dive. She called it the Leonidas Squadron, named after the Spartan king who died holding the pass at Thermopylae with 300 warriors. The message was clear. These men would die for their homeland, and their deaths would be glorious. She took the proposal directly to Hitler. He was reportedly moved. He approved it, and volunteers were recruited. Approximately 70 pilots initially signed up, motivated by fanaticism, desperation, or both. They were given minimal training. Their planes were stripped down and packed with explosives. They were, in every practical sense, human bombs. The squadron was ultimately never deployed in large scale. Allied advances moved too fast. But the intent was real. The preparation was real. And Reitsch's role in designing, proposing, and recruiting for a suicide unit was entirely voluntary. This was not a soldier following orders. This was a true believer designing new ways to kill for the Reich. April 1945. Berlin was on fire. Soviet forces had surrounded the city. Artillery shells fell day and night. The streets were rubble. The Reich that was supposed to last 1,000 years was dying in real time. Most sane people were trying to escape Berlin. Hanna Reitsch was trying to get in. On April 26, 1945, she and General Robert Ritter von Greim flew a small Fiesler Storch aircraft through a gauntlet of Soviet anti-aircraft fire and fighter planes directly into the burning heart of Berlin. Von Greim was shot through the foot during the approach. Reitsch took the controls and landed the aircraft on a bombed-out road near the Brandenburg Gate, one of the most dangerous and audacious landings in aviation history. They descended into the Führer bunker, where Hitler was spending his final days underground as his world collapsed above him. Reitsch found him diminished, trembling, pale, ranting. She reportedly wept at his condition. She begged him to let her die there, in the bunker at his side. He refused. He gave her a cyanide pill for safekeeping and sent her away. She and von Greim left Berlin on April 29th, just hours before Hitler's suicide. She was one of the last people to see Adolf Hitler alive. Years later, she would describe the experience not with shame, but with grief for him. For Hitler, not for the millions his regime had murdered. The war ended. Hitler was dead. The Reich was dust. And Hanna Reitsch walked free. She was captured by American forces and held for 18 months of interrogation. She was never charged with war crimes. She was released in 1946, and the world, inexplicably, welcomed her back. In the 1950s and 60s, she toured the globe as a celebrated aviator. She trained pilots in Ghana for Prime Minister Kwame Nkrumah. She met Jawaharlal Nehru of India. She was received in the Oval Office by President John F. Kennedy, the president of the nation that had just defeated the regime she served. She continued to set aviation records. She wrote memoirs. She gave interviews. And in every interview, in every memoir, she refused to condemn National Socialism. She expressed no remorse for the V-1 bombs that killed London civilians. No grief for the Jews, the Roma, the disabled, the millions murdered by her beloved Reich. When pressed on German guilt, she said, "We don't explain the real guilt we share, that we lost." The guilt to her was losing. Hanna Reitsch died on August 24, 1979, in Frankfurt. The official cause of death was a heart attack. She was 67 years old. But in the years before her death, multiple sources reported that she had spoken of the cyanide pill, the same one Hitler had given her in the bunker. Whether she used it or whether it was simply her heart remains disputed to this day. She was eulogized as a pioneer, an aviation legend, a record breaker, and she was all of those things. She was also a fanatic, a true believer, a woman who helped build weapons of terror, proposed suicide bombers for a genocidal regime, flew to a mass murderer's side in his final hours, and never, not once, said she was wrong. History remembers the records. We must also remember what she did with them.